I realized that the books throughout the years were getting edgier. There was foul language, graphic violence, sexual content, topics of the occult. And the worst part was that the books were deceiving. So as a mom volunteer at my kid's school, I couldn't just take the books out because I didn't know which one it was, which ones were bad or good, because the covers of many of them were very wholesome, very cute. And the description was completely different of what's later found in that book, that a parent would come to the school and say, oh my gosh, look what my kid is reading.
This is Virtuous Leaders, the podcast for based Catholics who will speak truth, do good, or die trying. Here's the show. Liz, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Can you start by telling us a little bit about what you do?
Yes, I'm the founder of Literacy Advocates USA. And what we do is we instill the joy of reading in students and provide them with good, clean reads and also good media. And we do this with a Good News Book Fair, school-hosted book fairs. And this, the way this all started was because my background is in journalism. And when my oldest daughter was born, I took some time off, to be with her school life. And that time off it was supposed to be for a little bit, but it turned out to be a lot of years because I had more kids and I wanted to stay with them, and interact with their school life. And as I interacted with their school life, I participated in the book fairs because of my background, and I'm also a traditionally published author. I said, I will volunteer for the book fairs in their school. And then I realized that the books throughout the years were getting edgier. There was foul language, graphic violence, sexual content, topics of the occult. And the worst part was that the books were deceiving. So as a mom volunteer at my kid's school, I couldn't just take the books out because I didn't know which one it was, which ones were bad or good, because the covers of many of them were very wholesome, very cute. And the description was completely different of what's later found in that book, that a parent would come to the school and say, oh my gosh, look what my kid is reading. So I never thought of starting this organization. I wanted an alternative for my children's school. So at that time, I went to different Catholic publishers because I happen to be Catholic. And I went to other Christian publishers and I went to different places and I said, hey, can you start a book fair company for our school? And then everybody told me, I'm not interested, but you have the passion, you should do it. And so I thought about it, but the whole purpose for me was to stay with my kids and participate in their school life. And that's why I left a career that was very, fulfilling for me in the media. And then, so I waited until my youngest was in high school. And during that time, I just became a source of information for other parents. And I read everything that my kids were going to be exposed to. And I let other people know about the different things that were out there and the books that they should, get for their kids. And then when my youngest daughter was in high school, I said, things are not getting any better. The kids are old enough for me to do something. And that's when I felt the calling to start Good News Book Fair. That was in 2014. And our first book fair was 2015 in the beginning of the year. And we're celebrating our 10th anniversary.
How do you find those clean books, clean media?
Well, what we do is, it's a great question. What we do is that we purchase from different publishers, both Christian titles in Catholic for the Catholic schools and also secular books. And then we have a group of curators and we select books that we think that would be interesting. Or sometimes by now, publishers just send us books. And then we send it to our curators that we have selected from around the country. And they're composed of parents, authors, and media specialists. And they read the whole book and they go through a guideline to see, is there positive values in this book? Is there foul language? Is there magic? How is it portrayed? Is there scariness? Is there violence? And then is there sexual content? They go through a whole list of things that we have outlined. At the end, they put a little bit of the review of the book. And that's how we make our selection, to make sure that, it's a clean read. And we buy books from different genres because we know sometimes kids want to read something that's faith-filled, but other times they also want to read something about dinosaurs or cars. And so we are always in contact with media specialists in schools to make sure what the kids would like to read. We ask kids, because we visit sometimes some book fairs, we ask kids what they would like to read and make sure that all the books, have something of interest and make reading fun. A lot of kids nowadays, and as the studies show, are not reading for entertainment. They're not reading for fun. And this is very important that they do this, because while they read, they enjoy themselves. They learn so many virtues and they learn without even realizing it. And so we want to make reading fun. So we bring authors to these book fairs. And so that the engaged reader will get really excited and the reluctant reader will get excited as well and want to read.
So do you have a list that parents can access to see how you rate various books?
Well, we don't have a list because we're always changing, but they could go to our website, goodnewsbookfair.com, because we're always changing books because we want to make sure. Schools have a book fair usually twice a year, so they don't want to see the same thing. So we keep the bestsellers and the classic, but we're always changing to make it, different and exciting for the kids.
I hear you. So it's more about what is the books that you're publicizing now versus having like a perennial list of books that have been banned.
Correct. And it's very important. I always tell parents, it's very important that your kids see you reading too. So we have a section in our book fairs for parents and teachers as well, because the kids are mostly going to do what they see you doing and not usually what you tell them to do. So if they see you engaged in good quality reading, they will see the fun in it and want to do the same.
Can you just clarify what you mean by magic, how it's portrayed? Like, for
Yes,
example, where would you put Harry Potter?
Yes, for example, we carefully look into books like this. Does the magic, is it like a magic that has to do with the occult? Is it a magic that has to do with something like a fairy tale? Is it, for example, in Harry Potter, does good win over evil? And things that
Hmm.
those are the things that we take in consideration.
Yeah. Okay. So is it in the end forming the moral imagination? So just the fact that it mentions magic isn't a red flag, but how it's portrayed.
Exactly. And now that you mentioned imagination, that's so important because right now, in the world we live in, there are lots of active organizations that want to capture the imagination of our kids with things that have to do with their ideology. And therefore, we have to be, as parents, as educators, always on guard of what our kids are reading and seeing because their imagination is very powerful. There are studies that show nowadays that doctors are giving kids things to read before, like good, inspiring books to read before surgery so that they can be calm instead of medication. And so, it is so powerful, the imagination of a child. If a child starts seeing things that have to do with science, then they will be inclined to, learn more about science. Everything that, they capture is like a sponge. Everything that they absorb, really affects them. And that way we have to make sure that the way they do absorb is things that are true, good, and beautiful.
Exactly. Can you give some examples of Trojan horses you've encountered over the years? So books that, especially ones that are more popular now that may seem innocuous, but they actually have deformative content in them.
Oh, yes, there are a lot. And I don't want to make sure that I don't forget many. But you can always look into our website because we do book reviews as well. And to make sure that, the books are good. There are books, for example, and I don't want to say specific because I don't want people to think that only those are. Every book, can be a potential, dangerous thing. So you have to really check. And if you can't, then you have to go through sources like ours that curate. Because right now there are books and series, books 1 to 3rd grade that are about biographies of different well-known people. And you may think that you know that well-known person and it's okay to read about them, but they will include something like some information that's like tabloid. They will say, for example, there's a popular book for children about the story of Picasso. And it's for 1st to 3rd graders, and they will have an outline of all the women that Picasso had a relationship with and their children out of wedlock. So imagine, you're going into and you're giving your child a book that is over their head. They don't understand many of these concepts and they don't need to at their age. So it's very important that, parents read that. Sometimes there is a good book, you mentioned about J.K. Rowling, and there's biographies about her that are good, but then they go on to talk about how that Harry Potter books were challenged at one point. And then they go on a whole chapter about other books that parents have not liked kids to read. And this is inside a kid's book. So they list other books, to pick the curiosity of the child to see, hey, why am I not allowed to read these
Mm,
books? So you have to
mm.
be very careful. Also with series, there are a lot of series that we grew up with that we loved and were very wholesome. And now they've been re-edited and have other content.
Oh,
There's a
wow.
graphic novels, for example, of Little Women, and in that graphic novel, Little Women, there's a sexual component. Joe, has a same-sex attraction, and so they change things. So it's very important that we read everything that our kids read, and then if we don't have time, then we skim through it. We look at book reviews online to make sure that what they're reading is appropriate.
That's so diabolical. And on the other hand, what are the positive books that you'd like to highlight?
Oh, we have wonderful positive books. And please go to our website so you can see. We have books, for example, Wild Ride. It's about a girl who had the challenge of having cancer. And yet, she dedicated later her life, she survived and she dedicated her life to working with kids who have cancer. And she flew and was able to go to the moon as an astronaut. So, we have a lot of our books are, positive books. They're a great series that we have books that instead of, for example, the wimpy kid who happens to be a kid that is really a bully, actually, and cheats and lies and does everything their parents don't want them to do. We have books that inspire kids, to be different and to be a counterculture, to spread the good, like the Warriors series. Like we have so many books that are just, very inspiring. The Will Wilder series. I mean, a lot of other books, the Warriors Kids books. I mean, a lot of books that are inspiring and that are alternatives to these books nowadays.
Yeah. So I just want to summarize and put an analysis of your message. So you're ordinary mom who saw a problem in her community and you tried to get other people to fix it and they wouldn't. So you stepped up and solved the problem. And that's what Virtuous Leaders is all about. So congratulations first on that.
Thank you. And it started with I noticing something, but now it's more about we. We are a team. We
Mm.
grew for 10 years. We started as a business. And 2 years ago, we said, one day when we retire, our kids have their own careers. They're not going to keep up with this. We want this to be a legacy. We want this to more people involved in this with great mind. So we became a nonprofit. And that's when we started Literacy Advocates USA.
Got it. Yeah. And it's a very important message because these days parents are busy. They're also very naive. The culture is not with you, it's against you. And you can't trust what is popularly accepted. In fact, that's probably an indication that it's going to be harmful. So this is a good opportunity for parents to wake up to the realistic dangers, and you facilitate their coming to the truth so that they don't have to do all the work themselves, although they have to do some work. A wise man once said, "Reading has made many saints," like Saint Ignatius of Loyola converted to reading. Well, the opposite side of that is bad reading has also destroyed many saints. So thank you for the work that you do, Liz.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And actually, that you mentioned about parents, and they did a recent study, the Rasmussen research in conjunction with Capital Resource, and they surveyed voters from all political and demographics. And the conclusion of the survey was that they agree that they don't want obscene books in public school libraries. 77% are concerned school-age children are being exposed to sexual material that is not age appropriate. 55% were very concerned, and 20 were not concerned. So that little minority sometimes can be very loud. So I tell
Exactly.
people and parents, if you see something, make a difference, go to your schools and tell them there's an alternative, and help, bring good media to your children and to others. There's sometimes when I speak about this in different organizations and places, they will tell me, I'm so glad that my kids are grown up already and I don't have to deal with that and they're good readers. But it's not just about your kids, it's about
Mhm.
all the other kids around because they grow up and they affect you because they affect the culture. They're the ones that are going to be voters. They're the ones that are coming into the workforce. If they don't know how to read or they have different values, it affects everyone around us.
That's exactly right. And that's one thing that kind of radical individualism omits is that we have a communion of saints where each one's good affects the other and vice versa.
Yes. And what we say at Literacy Advocates USA is that if we change the media, we change the culture. And that is our, our vision, to be able to reach every child with the possibility of reading, because reading it's low and it affects the workforce. Right now, the scores are low in our country. So be able to have the ability to read for fun, to enjoy and have a love for literacy, and to give them the right media that they should have, but to reach every child. We started, because as Catholics that we are, we started with Catholic schools, and then we had requests from Protestant schools, and now we're in many Protestant schools around the country. They didn't want the trash that is going on in schools now and in libraries, and so now we do charter schools as well, and we're doing public schools too. So because they have an interest as well. So we're trying to be able to reach every child that we can.
Thank you, Liz.
Oh, my pleasure, my pleasure. And we want the help of everybody. Your time, talent, and treasure is so important. It was Pope John Paul II that said, don't settle for mediocrity. Go out there and do not be afraid. And that's what I tell parents. It's about making a difference. Mother Angelica always said that as well. It's about making a difference. God put you at this time in history so you can do something good in the world.
I think that's a beautiful note to end on. Change the media, change the culture. Thanks, Liz Lantigua.
Thank you so much for having us here. And everybody that wants more information, wants to reach out to help, we're at goodnewsbookfair.com.
Thanks for listening. Please like, subscribe, and share with your friends. See you next time.